This video is part of the Weed Warriors Removing Invasive Plants to Benefit Native Plants and Pollinators video series. This video series is funded by Legacy Partners in Environmental Education. This area has a large number of Chinese privet in the understory. So there's shrubs here below the trees. The native trees are still here, but the native trees are not able to recruit or have a lot of seedlings because the Chinese privet has taken over that part of the forest structure. Also, the Chinese privet is shading out other plants below it, and this really negatively affects the pollinators because they depend on native plants as their food source and also as a habitat to recruit their larvae. In this area, the English ivy has covered the ground and is starting to grow up the trees. So the English ivy is outcompeting the native plants. The native plants are what the pollinators rely on for their food because they need that nectar that they get from the native plants. So when you have something like English ivy that covers the ground, you don't have the native plants that the pollinators need. This area at the Arboretum is full of Chinese privet and English ivy in the trees. You can even see a little bit of red Nandina berries there. The diversity in this area is much lower, and this is actually part of the area that we're trying to restore. And what we've noticed in places where we've removed the invasive species is we have more native plants coming back, and with that, more pollinators. In this area, we have an invasive non-native bamboo species. It has effectively eliminated all other vegetation. This is bad for our native plants. There's no room for them to grow, and that is really bad for the pollinators. The bamboo is not a flowering species. There is nothing here for the pollinators to eat. This is an invasive shrub called Eliagnus. It is in the olive family. It produces berries that are spread by birds, and it has a silvery tone under its leaf. This is another ornamental that's escaped at the Arboretum. This is often called monkey grass. It's a species of liriopene. So it's got these small thin leaves and black berries on it, and it can grow and cover an area, choking out the native plants. Right next to it here is some non-native Japanese honeysuckle, which is also a problem. This plant is called Nandina Domestica. It has bright red berries and large compound leaves. They have a pretty fall color. Unfortunately, this is a really noxious invasive. It can grow large and thick. It spreads by the berries, and birds will eat the berries. They're actually toxic for some species of birds. We've been focusing our efforts for removing invasive Chinese privet and English ivy here on the edge of the children's garden. We've got some spots where the privet is resprouting. You can see here in the foreground. But underneath the trees, we're doing pretty well. And last spring, we actually had some wildflowers that came up in this area. And what we will be doing, we'll continue to use hand methods. We'll use some manual removal using tools, and also do more herbicide in this area. And it's going to take us several years to really make an impact. This is a native plant called Partridge Berry. It has a small red berry, and right now we're in the winter. These berries are an important source of food for wildlife. In the spring, the flowers attract pollinators, and this is an example of a plant that is native in the forest. These are the leaves of a native orchid species. This is the Fly Orchid. In the winter, their green leaves persist, and they actually have a bright purple underside. A lot of the leaves will be bumpy on the top. And this plant has a special pollinator. It's pollinated by a moth. The flowers come up during the summer, and the summer flowers look similar to a crane fly. It's actually pollinated by a moth, like many orchid species. And the pollen of the crane fly orchid is deposited on the moth's eyes, and then the moth flies to the next flower and passes the pollen along. This is a southern magnolia, Magnolia grandiflora. This is native to Alabama. It makes big, white, fragrant flowers in the summer. They're about the size of a dinner plate. And there are other species of magnolia that are also native to Alabama that you can plant in your landscape. This happens to be an evergreen magnolia. This is great for pollinators who are attracted to the flowers. Butterflies, bees, wasps, we all enjoy magnolia flowers. This is a native blueberry, Vaccinium, and it's known commonly as a mayberry. And these produce edible fruits. And this is a nice alternative to some other shrubs that you might have in your yard. This is an Leaf Hydrangea. This is a really nice native plant. It's native to forest, grows along stream banks. You can grow it in full sun in your lawn, or you can put it in part sun under the shade of trees. It grows really nice, big oak leaf shaped leaves. That's where the name comes from. The oak leaf has lobes on it, and so this hydrangea has lobed leaves. And the flower heads, these are the dead heads because we're in the winter right now. In the spring, it will grow new leaves out of the buds, and then in the summer, it will have beautiful, big white flowers that last a long time. So you'll have pretty white flowers in the summertime. This is a great plant for native pollinators. Bees really love the oak leaf hydrangea, but other pollinators will visit it as well. One thing that you can do at home to help native plants and pollinators is to leave the leaves on the ground to let them go through the normal winter cycle. What happens is butterflies will lay their eggs on the green leaves, and then in the fall, those leaves will fall off the plant, and the larvae will be in cocoons on those leaves. At home, you can support pollinators by doing things like leaving dead flower stems. This is a native plant called Echinacea, or a purple coneflower. You want to let the seeds fall so they naturally regenerate. And then let the stems overwinter. In the spring, native bees will be able to use the stems of these plants. An arboretum or a botanical garden is a great place to come to learn to identify plants, because a lot of the specimens, the individuals that are planted there, are labeled. Our wildflower garden here at the arboretum has many flowering plants, native herbaceous flowering plants. Springtime is a really great time. There'll be different things blooming all from February through May and into June. We have native azaleas, which are really fragrant. We have trees. Trees are also an important source of flowers for pollinators. And so it's important to have native trees in your landscape. Thank you for watching our video series. I hope that you've learned the basics of how to identify native and invasive plants and the benefits of removing invasive plants for native plants and pollinators. If you'd like to learn more and register your participation in our program, please visit our website for supplementary materials. You are also welcome to contact us for additional training. Thank you to our sponsor, Legacy Partners in Environmental Education. Purchasing a Legacy Specialty License Tag in the state of Alabama funds programs like ours and environmental education training for teachers.